At the midway point of the series in Episode 5, we got a glimpse into Captain Richard Winters' mind and learned his perspective from October 5, 1944, all the way up to December 1944. This episode also marked the beginning of Band of Brothers' 6th season. Management, the qualities of an effective leader, and Captain Winters' qualifications as a potential role model for the troops to follow into battle became the central themes of this episode. Very different from the way the guys treated Sobel in the first episode. Come on, let's go into this video and dissect everything that has been thrown out from the episode since it comes before what I think is one of the good ones, which is Episode 6, Bastogny. The 5th episode of Band of Brothers is broken down here. This video contains spoilers for your understanding. Those interviews with 101st Airborne Division veterans were featured, as they are in every initial episode of Band of Brothers. Bob Popeye Wynn, Joe Lesnilsky, Captain Dick Winters, and Buck Compton were all interviewed for this set. Captain Winters' persona transformation to introduce the interview felt appropriate given the episode's focus on admirable leaders. He described the weight of responsibility that comes with being at the forefront of an endeavor and the weight that one must bear as a result. Afterwards, Buck Compton continued by discussing the qualities of an effective chief, and the other veterans began bringing up Dick Winters, though they did not say it directly. Supposedly, the man in question rose to the level of a true soldier, and many of his soldiers followed him into battle in contrast to a small number who would not follow positive leaders into water. He didn't know how Winters survived and made it back alive because of his altruistic character, Popeye said in the last sentence of the interview. Winters didn't have to be that way, but he clearly chose to be. We didn't realize it at the beginning of the show, but Captain Winters became the focal point of the entire thing. It became crystal clear after a few seconds that they had been discussing him a lot because the entire thing turned out to be about him. Until that time, Winters had been portrayed as an esteemed member of Easy Company who had been rapidly rising through the ranks. Truly hearing the real-life warriors speak about him, though, had a lot more impact than the show could have achieved through his fake performance. What they were saying had significance and admiration, and it was clear that they regarded him as both an individual and a leader. I therefore believe that the preliminary stage of the interviews had appropriately established the tone and atmosphere for the entirety that was about to commence. The scene that recurred after the interviews, there was a scene that recurred throughout the episode, nearly becoming a visual motif. Captain Winters' attitude at the beginning of the episode was completely chaotic. Using first-person perspective shots, close-ups taken with handheld cameras, and the sound of his breath as he transitioned to running, the viewer was able to fully immerse themselves in the moment and experience his terror and anxiety firsthand. It all came to a head when he saw a younger German soldier standing in his way. He swiftly took his life while staring directly into his eyes. I think we see this sequence maybe 3 or 4 times throughout the episode, and it's striking for a variety of reasons. Even though Winters contemplated this moment heavily, the situation is one of kill or be killed. But it was during his 48-hour break in Paris that he gave it the greatest thought. When staring at a little child, he had a flashback of the boy he had murdered. At that instant, we noted that he detected concern in the eyes of the person standing before him. For the first time, he almost viewed this person as a person, not merely an adversary. One possible explanation is that those thoughts were able to enter his consciousness when he became reintegrated into society after a long absence. It was undeniably a dramatic opening scene that set the tone for the entire episode and introduced us to its many distinctive features while simultaneously revealing their immediate effect on Winters. Following that recollection, the event in Schoonderlocht, Holland, on October 17, 1944, became the defining moment when we could tell Winters and Nixon were different. These two were good friends and frequently were throughout the program, but their disagreements were the glue that held them together. While Nixon is someone you would believe completely, he just doesn't appear to be as on top of things as his accurate friend Winters, who is both a leader and someone who follows the regulations to a T. Nixon remained in bed, looking hungover and in need of a pea-plow to pull himself out of bed, while Winters got up and got ready. Upon reaching their destination, Winters and Nixon overheard Colonel Sink and many other officers discussing an upcoming operation. The name for this became Operation Pegasus. This escalated into a military operation, which was successfully completed in Arnhem, Netherlands on the Lower Rhine. Thousands of men were left behind as the 1st British Airborne Division withdrew due to the September blocking in the Rhine's northern half. But a few hundred of them, with the aid of the Dutch resistance, had managed to escape capture and go into hiding. Supporting Lt. Col. David Dobie in successfully recovering the approximately 140 men who were trapped was the responsibility of the 101st Airborne Division. While the operations plans were being presented, we didn't get a close look at it like we did with some of the other operations we'd seen on screen. However, our focus shifted squarely to Winter as we saw his reaction to the new dialogue. Again, this lets us see how he became reacting to what became happening, his frame of mind and his emotions over what became to come. Even though Winters hadn't gotten around to it yet, Colonel Sink was prepared on a report regarding Easy Company's combat on October 5th, which became October 17th. At this point, a stylistic approach to the episode's first half's execution became apparent. From October 5th onwards, we would cut out Winters' writings on the night patrol, as well as everything happening in the present day, while he was writing them and the conversations he became entangled in. This seamless transition between the two time periods gave us a glimpse inside Winters' thoughts as he relived the events, and it became a brilliant move. As Ez settled down on October 5th, we witnessed a peaceful evening. However, one line in particular stood out to me. Winters and Tab were talking about how some of the replacements probably hadn't shaved before and were just little kids. Looking down at the man he had murdered the day before, something seemed to race through Winters' brain. The transition from relative peace to complete anarchy rife with death was something we'd seen in earlier episodes as well, and that became the case when Allie was brought in due to her injuries and the critical nature of the situation. Because of this, Winters and a few other men set out to find the German soldiers who may have been hiding in the area and were responsible for the attack. When they heard the enemy's fire, all of the men jumped to their feet, revealing Winters' managerial mindset. However, he was the one who risked everything to make sure he had a better look at what they might be dealing with. Furthermore, he gave the order to wait for his signal before making any changes. The interviewees had previously described him as an outstanding and observable leader, so this became a natural extension of their remarks. He began putting himself in harm's way before he would endanger the lives of other people, proving that he saw them all as equals and not as superior. With Winters and the men advancing towards their objective, the camera switches back and forth multiple times between Winters' writing and the scene where they are walking towards their objective. Because of this, the suspense could build, and it was clear how far Winters wanted to dive into the file he was providing Colonel Singh. Again, this became something that, at one point in the episode, demonstrated a subtle difference between Nix and Winters. Nixon claimed it wasn't literature and that he should keep things simple, but Winters became going into such depth, and I believe he was because it, once again, reflected his character. On the other hand, there may be information there that is crucial to fate. As Winters began to put his thoughts on paper, the intensity of his reflections became palpable, much like the deafening din of the battlefield. However, due to the room's eerie stillness and the close-up picture of his face, it seemed as though all the commotion from the battlefield was happening within his head. At first, there was complete quiet, but then he started paying attention.